and he told jurors to pay particular attention to the written questions about their ability to be fair in a terrorism case. The men say the money they sent overseas was for purely innocent purposes. The men are charged with providing material support to terrorists by allegedly funneling about $50,000 to the Pakistani Taliban. They have pled not guilty. Charges were dropped against another of Khan's sons. Pennsylvania's governor says he's going to file a lawsuit against the NCAA over the Jerry Sandusky child sex abuse scandal. Here's correspondent Ed Donahue.
Tom Corbett says the penalties are harsh and punish the Penn State community, not Jerry Sandusky.
While the healing was taking place, I believe the NCAA took actions and piled on.
The sanctions were imposed in July and include a $60 million fine for child abuse prevention grants. Corbett says it was overreaching and unlawful.
This was a criminal matter, not a violation of NCAA rules.
The NCAA based its sanctions on a report by former FBI Director Louis Freeh that concluded legendary coach Joe Paterno and other Penn State officials covered up abuse reports. I'm Ed Donahue.
And with IRN USA Radio News, I'm Hope Duggar.
What you want to know. What you need to know. This is South Florida's Health and Wealth Radio, AM 1470, WNN.
Here's some great news from Tom Trento, host of the daily WNN Trento Vision Show. Due to the unparalleled success of the Trento Vision Show, you now have an amazing opportunity to advertise on the Trento Vision Show. If you want more information about this excellent opportunity for your business, please contact Tom Trento at 561-319-5533, or you can email him, tom@trentovision.tv. The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to Trento Vision, where bad ideas get pulverized and the truth will set you free. Trento Vision is hosted by Tom Trento. Tom can be reached at 561-319-5533 or tom@trentovision.tv. Listen and watch every weekday from 3 to 6 p.m. on AM 1470 WNN and trentovision.tv. Now, let's get a peek at Tom's view of the world. Here's Tom Trento.
If you are watching on Trento Vision, you're seeing some of the art of the 19th century, circa Civil War, United States of America, and some of the photos of the life of a slave, the business of slavery, families of Negroes, as they were referred to in that time period. There's one I'm looking at right now who was a soldier with his family. And Abraham Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation, and that's pretty well-known artwork right there. And that's our topic for today, because 150 December 25-26. We did a civics lesson, American history, here on Trento Vision, WNN 1470, on George Washington, a general back then, crossing the Delaware on the late evening of Christmas. Late evening of Christmas, yeah, there's some of the black soldiers on Trento Vision, on the Vision side. And that was in 1787. Back then, last week we did that little story, and we referred back to Thomas Paine, his well-known writing, The American Crisis. These are days that try men's souls. Well, this week our history lesson, is on another anniversary. Today is the anniversary of the first day of implementation. The Emancipation Proclamation that we all studied in school was implemented yesterday, January 1st. Today is the first full day of implementation. But CJ, you have an interesting point. But hold
I
your
have
point.
an interesting point?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
There was 2 phases to the emancipation.
Right.
One was earlier. What date was that?
September 22nd.
September 22nd.
Of 1862.
1862. And let's tease the audience a little bit.
No.
Why did he write the proclamation and kind of say, I got it here, folks, on September 22nd, 1862, and implement it on January 1st, 1863?
Yeah, why did he do that?
Yeah,
that was pretty slick.
We will answer that question. But first, we forgot to do really clean dishes. We did the
Where are my samples?
I'll get them today because they were sent to my office, and I haven't been to my office, but I will get them today.
You get them.
But until then,
you get them to me tomorrow.
One of our friends of our show has a little business, and nobody, even Peter Feynman, the lawyer, doesn't want dirty dishes. So when you wash your dishes, when you wash your dishes, and I'm sure they washed their dishes in the Civil War times, but they couldn't use this product. But now you can use really.
Your dishes out of the dishwasher, they aren't really clean. Can you see film on your glassware? You probably think it's your dishwasher, but it's not. It's your detergent. Really Clean is a dishwasher detergent booster, and it really works. Just add a Really Clean tablet along with your favorite detergent. Really Clean tablets are not sold in stores. Order them at reallycleandishes.com. That's reallycleandishes.com.
So it's a little vitamin for cleaning dishes.
It looks pretty easy. It looks so easy I could do it.
Yeah, well, we need the samples.
Yeah, I need
and
the samples.
They're coming. They are coming.
Yeah. You know why?
Why?
Because, over a period of time, it seems like, your glasses or your cutlery are not quite as sparkly as they could be. And that really bothers me, especially when I have company for supper. So I really, really want to see.
Take out a fork. It's got food from yesterday.
No, it's not food. It doesn't. Even though I know it's clean because it came out of the dishwasher, it just doesn't. It has like little water spots on it or just something. Well, so I want to see if it gets sparkly.
Well, and also if you use soap and detergent on your glasses, your beer will taste different. Your champagne will taste different because it kills the bubbles and everything. All your beverages actually
you want
taste.
to get all that stuff off.
And also even your Cokes and sodas will all taste different.
Does Really Clean Dishes get that off? I guess.
Well, let's see.
We'll find out.
But usually I wash my dishes by hand.
I've solved these problems.
You've solved these
problems.
I
serve our guests little packets. They rip the plastic off, and they cellophane off, and they get their little plastic fork right out, nice and clean.
Oh, you are the host with the
most.
And
they can throw it in the garbage when they're done. Actually, we can recycle the forks, too, nowadays. But Really Clean Dishes, we will, once we do the testing, the consumer testing on that, be able to tell you a little more about it.
Yes, I'm waiting to do my cutlery, so please.
We can tell you a lot on a lot about the website radicalislam.org. And as you know, we fight the jihad. We make jihad fun here on this show, but we fight the jihad, particularly the cultural end of the jihad. And one of the places we use for references is radicalislam.org.
Yes, a very excellent website with very excellent writers. Ryan Morrow, Claire Lopez.
Two fellows.
Yeah, two fellows. Yes, very good.
But let's get into right now the issue at hand, the celebration of the sesquicentennial. The sesquicentennial recognition. Is it a celebration? Sure, I guess it's a celebration. Recognition of the effort to end slavery in the United States of America. Let me ask you guys, and you guys out there, 888-565-1470. How in their right mind could the framers come up with a constitution and still own slaves and all of that stuff?
I have no idea.
I do.
How does that
always
happen?
mystified me.
Well, the point being was people can be considered property in in certain countries where they actually went out and they purchased people to work on their plantations or whatever. And it was basically a view that there were two classes of people. One was a divine people, and the other was that their life had no meaning, a nihilistic viewpoint, if you will, of their existence. Everything they did actually had no meaning or purpose. So therefore, they were properties and could be used as such. And it was very economical for them to put people on plantations to work as far as if you think that your ideas are superior to others.
I thought they did it because there was no air conditioning.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there was no air conditioning. Could you imagine living down here? And just think of everything you do in a day with no air conditioning. You couldn't function.
Right.
You couldn't work. You couldn't do anything.
Well,
you
actually,
couldn't do anything in your house. So you needed people to do that stuff for you.
Yeah, the mass. I mean, there's actually a whole fascinating history about air conditioning in Florida and how it actually sparked the whole.
Really?
Really, there is. It's actually created by a Jew who was a senator.
A Jew?
A Jew out of who was the first state senator. He was the first senator of Florida.
Some Jew senator.
Yeah.
You did not say that.
Yes, I did. No, a person of the
Jewish person.
Oh, okay, Miss PC. You know the way I mean it.
We know what you mean.
But the scriptor, not a cut, is a
Jew.
Hate speech.
It's hate speech. It's hate speech.
Well, I know what you meant.
We know what you meant. Yeah.
But but a really fascinating history, and one of the first Jewish people to actually ascend into the Florida. Well, anyway, I don't want to get off into that.
Yeah. Well.
But the point being is there was. It was tied into the economy. It was an economic way for plantations to actually farm and mine and do whatever for the crops and everything to actually bring up the economy of the South. And it was simple economics. And whereas you considered people as property, they could actually be thought of as property. And if that is your mindset, then of course this is property. You're messing with my property. It is not something that you look at as an individual as a person.
Right.
It's a very nihilistic view of people.
All right, so these guys, the founders, the framers, they were influenced by England, obviously, a lot. England had slaves, and there was different classes of people, as you're saying.
Well, they weren't people; they were property. It's a different mindset.
It's a different mindset, right? But you got to feed your property.
The reason I bring up property is because that was going back to the Declaration of Independence, where it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It originally was life, liberty, and property.
All right, but let's get into the psychology of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and these guys. They're writing the founding documents. And they own slaves, right? And like hundreds of slaves for the plantations and all of this. Mm-hmm. And they're not dumb guys; these are human beings. But they're saying what I'm writing about right here doesn't apply to all you people working for me, right?
Well, my property; those are people working for you. That's where you're making the mistake of the mindset. The mindset is they are property. It's like your car.
All right, well, let me take it a step further.
Like in Islam, women are property. But go ahead.
All right, well, that was 1776. So a little less than 100 years. In 1857, a case went to the Supreme Court. Dred Scott. 1857, Dred Scott. Dred Scott was the name of a slave, and he was suing for his freedom because you could buy your way out even in America in the 18th century. 19th century, and the Supreme Court issued a decision 7-2, and now you're talking about they're viewed as property and all of that. Here's what the Supreme Court said: 7-2 decision in Dred Scott. Taney decided, the head justice, according to Taney, the authors of the Constitution had viewed all blacks as, and I'm quoting, beings of an inferior order and altogether unfit to associate with the white race, either in social or political relations, and so far inferior that they had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. That's part of the decision of the Supreme Court, and the decision was reached based upon 421 pages of research regarding the mindset of the authors of the Constitution.
Once again,
the court also presented, this is Dred Scott, 1857, a parade of horribles argument based upon the Privileges and Immunities Clause of Article 6 of the Constitution, listing what the court considered to be the inevitable and undesirable effects of granting Dred Scott, his petition, which is freedom. If we give freedom to the blacks, to the Negroes, it would give the persons of the Negro race the right to enter every other state whenever they pleased, to sojourn there as long as they pleased, to go wherever they pleased, the full liberty of speech in public and in private upon all subjects upon which its own, this is the Supreme Court of the United States, which its own citizens might speak, to hold public meetings upon political affairs, to keep and carry arms wherever they went. And then it goes on into the problems that will cause in the state.
Full constitutional rights.
Yeah, as of 1857, now we're in 1863, just 6 years later, is the Emancipation Proclamation. So the Supreme Court decides, now this past 100 years, from 1776 to 1857, 90 years, there's battles going on, between philosophical leaders in America and abolitionists from England going, this is wrong, this is wrong. But it had become so systemic in the economy of the South, even of the North. It was an economic issue for a great part. I mean, how are you going to get all this work done? It's like Walmart. Walmart uses Chinese slave labor shops, supposedly, little kids to get the cheap prices. That's what the slavery did to a large degree. So, but I just want to get the timeline. We're not going to dive into all of this right now. We're going to go into the Emancipation. But the timeline is 57, Dred comes out, Dred Scott, and the country says, oh, okay, that's over with. We got slavery. Problem solved. Yeah. They're inferior. They can't do this. They can't do that. A guy senator in Illinois didn't buy it. Right. He said, something's not right.
It's not quite kosher. Yeah.
So 62 comes along, and what happened in September 62?
The Battle of Antietam.
Go ahead, Civil War expert. Tell us about it.
Civil War expert, which was declared to be a victory for the North. So Lincoln took that as his time to strike, to issue the Emancipation.
Good politician. He's looking for some facts on the ground.
He was looking for a way to, turn the war around, turn the tides of fortune for the North.
Let me ask this question
internationally,
first.
He was looking for international support because there was a lot of international support for the South during this period of time because they wanted the cotton.
Yeah, and Britain and France were building ships for the South.
Yeah.
And on a militaristic viewpoint.
Yeah. So in order to shore up the diplomatic credentials of the United States and specifically the North, Lincoln knew that was going to be politically very appealing to Europe.
Was the Civil War fought initially over the slavery issue?
It would be, yeah.
Yes.
No. Yes, it was.
I mean, that was the dividing line.
Lincoln brought it in. It was a secession issue. I mean, these states want to secede for a whole bunch of reasons.
For a whole bunch of reasons.
Slavery, one of them.
Yeah, but really that was the issue.
It was then brought in, and this thing brought it in. This thing made it front and foremost.
It was the inability, really, of the country to compromise and to find. There had been lots of compromises leading up to the Civil War, but this was the one thing that really you couldn't reconcile the whole country around, and pretty much you had to divide. And you could just divide. I mean, you don't have to have a civil war. You can say, okay, we're seceding and that's it.
It'd be a federation
and
of
then,
friendly
right.
states.
But
they were all named like Republic of Florida, Republic of South Carolina.
What's
interesting? If somebody's 150 years old, they were there today. The sesquicentennial.
I don't think there's any people who are.
If anybody's 150 years old, give us a call. 888-555.
Yoda, if you're out there.
1470.
What's also interesting about the Emancipation is what is actually the North was in dire need of troops to fight a civil war. And the Emancipation was a way to get black troops into the military to have them a way to escape too.
That's a sneaky little.
And there was, because there's what people do not understand about the Civil War, a lot of blacks were actually called into service to fight for the North.
Well,
and they
yeah,
did.
I mean, at the start of the war, there were, even at the start of the war, there were about 500,000 slaves in the North.
Yes.
So,
well, let's go into let's get into some of this.
The manpower was there, and they were serving in the armed forces, but they were serving not at first as soldiers.
No,
but
they weren't serving as equals. They had segregated army units.
What was the population? See if you can find the population of the United States in 1863. There were 35
states.
About
30 million people.
All right, 30 million.
Altogether,
4 million,
including the slaves.
All right, there were 4 million slaves, so 30 million people.
Yeah.
We got 35 states. It's 1862 September. 30 million people, which is, this is so bizarre. That's less people than are in California right now.
Yeah.
150 years ago, today, when Abraham Lincoln implemented the Emancipation Proclamation, which, hang with us, folks, it ain't what you think it is.
It isn't what you think
no,
it is.
by any
which is
means.
the ultimate irony of it.
Yeah, it's kind of a scam document that found a good way out of the mess. But 150 years ago today, the Emancipation Proclamation was implemented. It started on yesterday, the 1st. But on the 22nd of September, 1862, 100 days before January 1st, 1863, President Lincoln said, I got an Emancipation Proclamation. I'm freeing the slaves, guys. He floated a trial balloon. He went on CNN. He had a press conference. He did a tour. He did all the Sunday talk shows. Except that's not how it happened, because there was no CNN. There were no Sunday talk shows. Yeah. So how do you tell 30 million people spread over our United States, because there were people all over the United States as it is now, how do you tell them, I got a real important document here that everybody should know about? I mean, that's tricky, the logistics.
Yeah.
So that's the reason he let it go on the battle.
100 days.
Yeah.
But he gave 100 days to get the word out,
right.
To say, if you states, if you guys are trying to secede, secession means to quit, we're quitting being part of your federation, and we're out of here. We're going to run our own deal. We don't like the way you do business. We don't like anything about you. The southern states didn't like the northern states. That's why we have football games today, the North against the South, instead of having civil wars.
And speaking of the press back then, there was a huge movement from the press. They were called the abolitionists, and they were actually highly urging Lincoln to free all the slaves too. So it was also a political movement also. And one of the research in one of the other books I was doing, we talked about the abolitionists. And
what's an abolitionist?
One who wants to emancipate,
to
abolish
slavery.
Yeah. And one of the main proponents of the abolitionist proponents was a writer called Horace Greeley.
Right.
Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Go West, young man.
Yeah.
Okay, and there was a lot of pressure from the northern writers and the northern press who were actually encouraging the emancipation of the slaves, to free them. And so there was the other political. So it was a political maneuver, a military maneuver, and also, he wanted to keep the Union together also. And
well, that was the whole point of the war, okay? Because really, the moral underpinning of the war was the issue of slavery. But the political issue was national sovereignty versus states' rights.
Yeah, because Lincoln
and
had said,
those two were incompatible because the country was not in agreement over the moral issue of
slavery, right?
And so
Whereas
one had to triumph over the other.
Now picture you're a
And
Southern.
what happened was, and that's really how you became the United States.
Picture
that's
you're a
really
Southern.
where the federal became more
That concept
important
came in.
than the state.
Picture you're a Southern land baron, and you've owned these cotton plantations for 100 years, and you've got 50, 80 slaves.
Well, you have a lot more than that.
And but they work on your property. They raise your kids. They are part of your family.
Yeah,
They're part
that's
of
very
everything.
point that you're making. You know, there's a large majority of people who actually ran these large plantations where the slaves were happy. They weren't in rebellion. They didn't.
This is not. Yeah, this is not slavery like
Islamic slavery.
Like Islamic slavery. This is not old Roman time slavery of building the pyramids
type of thing,
and all that kind of
No,
stuff.
they
or
actually-
even Russian serfdom.
I mean, the blacks had their place. They knew their place, and the whites had their place. They knew their place, and that was the Lord and Master. And these were the people who I took care of.
Yeah.
And
Very different kind of slavery, but still slavery. I mean,
but it was
still.
You know,
but
you can't go where you want
one person
to. You
owning
can't
another
vote.
person.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
come
base,
on.
But the
obviously.
point being, it was a symbiotic relationship where.
But
why are you guys trying to break up my little party here?
That's the point I'm trying to make. That just picture. He on September 22nd, 1862, he says, "I'm going to free the slaves," and all through the South they go. First of all, these guys don't even want to be free. They're fine.
Yeah, they're in trouble when they
protected.
become free.
Where are they going?
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to devastate the economy of the South down here. You're going to disrupt the lives. Everything's fine. You people in the North go away, right?
Yeah.
So on January 1st, yesterday, 150 years ago, he takes the opportunity, the president does, to say, here's the new law, guys. So he had Congress pass this law, right? No.
That was the first executive.
No,
it was an executive order.
He issued it as commander-in-chief.
Executive order.
Probably could not have gotten it past Congress at the time.
He couldn't have,
because there were slaves in the South, and the South kind of was jiggy with slavery, from an economic perspective. So he says, okay, now I'm going to read the proclamation. It's not that long, and we're going to comment on it. If you want to jump in, 888-565-1470. We're talking about the 150th anniversary. In terms of history, that's not that long ago. 150 years, man. A couple of generations. 150 years ago today, President Abraham Lincoln, just a few years before he gets assassinated,
by an extremist.
Yeah. He issues the Emancipation. I'm going to emancipate. I'm going to free. This is a proclamation about freedom. But watch when we get into the words.
Yeah.
The Emancipation Proclamation, January 1, 1863, 150 days, 150 years plus 1 day, by the President of the United States of America. Proclamation. Whereas on the 22nd day of September, in the year of our Lord 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of the United States containing, among other things, the following to wit. That's what we talked about. In September, he issued it. Here's what it said in September. That on the first day in January, commentary, 100 days from today, in the year of our Lord 1863, 150 years ago, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States. Okay, let's deconstruct that.
Yeah, that's
shall be thence and henceforward forever free. What does that mean? Somebody explain it to me.
Where you have your own self-determination to determine.
But what states?
Oh, it was 10 states, I think it was.
Yeah, but what is the language in there where he says
the language is
key
in there?
language?
The states that were in rebellion.
Oh, so the
states
southern.
the states that we're at war with up here, that we have actually no real control over right now. We're freeing you.
But he didn't say the ones in the North.
No, that's the whole joke of the Emancipation Proclamation.
They weren't freed in the North. They weren't freed in the border states. It was the
10
Confederate states.
This emancipation was so criticized by people saying, "Oh, let me get this straight.
It's slick.
The people you have no control over, you're freeing, but all the people you have control over, this doesn't apply to them."
Yes.
How does that work?
That was it.
And we would have said
plus,
the
you have
same
no
thing.
power to do it anyway.
Exactly.
Because you're making some BS executive order.
That's like us saying Trento Vision declares that all Islamic jihadis now need to get arrested. Or all the ones in foreign lands. It was ridiculous because he had no control and no capability to free the slaves in the states that were in rebellion.
That's why I say it was completely political. It was completely political.
But
even though it was something he believed in, and that he believed would happen when.
And he believed
everything
that
coalesced.
he being President Lincoln believed that this was such a divisive.
Divisive.
It's divisive. It's not
divisive. Sesquicentennial or sesquiquennial. He understood this was such a divisive issue, like the abortion issue today, something like that. That to take the culture from 100% pro-slavery to make it anti-slavery ain't going to happen overnight, and there's going to be a nasty war that's going to continue. So he said, let me do this in sort of a slick political way. All right, let's continue with the words. Very interesting.
Okay, and then we have a caller after you're done.
Okay, well, I'll finish this little paragraph, and then, so dig it so far.
Yeah.
The proclamation frees people that Lincoln has no control over, but lets all the people he can control, the northern slaves, says, "Oh, you got to stay there a little while."
You guys are free anyway. Don't worry about it.
Because why did he do that? What would have happened if he said all slaves are free as of today?
Well, because he'd had rebellion in the North.
The North would have rebelled against
my slaves are happy. What are you doing for my slaves?
Yeah, which shows the secession issue. That the northern states weren't rebelling from the Union, the southern ones were, and the northern were hanging in there. But he had to be careful with them. Okay, shall then be all the ones that I'm freeing in the rebellious states, thenceforward and forever free, because I said so. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof. This was an interesting little component. Will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons and will do no acts to repress such persons or any of them in any efforts they make for their actual freedom. Now what happened?
Now, that's the point where they started having large recruits of blacks coming into the military, and that was the military aspect of it. I mean, it's a very slick document in many ways.
Because there were parts of the South, the rebellious states, that were under Union control.
Right.
All right, so once there were portions, not the whole states, there were portions. So once the Emancipation came out, then those portions now were allowed to let those slaves who were in southern areas free to the military. The military could take them.
Right.
And they got something like 20,000 slaves were free the first day in that situation. And the military tried to recruit many of them very quickly, and many of them were recruited. Some were old ladies and everything.
A lot of the blacks
there were areas exempt. I'm
going to get into all that.
Yeah, the areas that were exempt were under northern control.
And a lot of the black troops also used as cannon fodder, too.
No, those areas were exempt.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that.
Yeah.
But let's take a call right now.
Let's take a call. Let's talk to Valanda, who we haven't spoken to since Christmas, and say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Valanda.
Oh, and hi, Blake. Happy New Year.
Hi. Happy New Year to you.
Hello.
Hello. Listen, I was listening to what you guys were talking about. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we hear you well.
Okay. I remember when I was in college at FAU, there was this course that we all had to take in senior. It's called Senior Seminar. And
it's called what?
Senior Seminar.
It was called Senior Seminar.
Right.
And in that seminar, we learned that there was an entire science that pretty much governed the thought processes from the, 17th, 18th, probably 18th, 19th centuries. And it was more like a eugenics type of science, wherein it basically said that the brains of blacks, or what they would call categorized Negroes, and other races were smaller or inferior to the ones of the Caucasian.
Right.
I remember distinctly them talking about the science of eugenics.
Right.
That governed not just what we saw legally and socially and everything else economically in the U.S., but at one time it governed most of the Western world. People liked their English when they had the slavery. It was the same type of mentality. We even learned up to the 20th century when we had the Margaret Sangers and those. Although birth control, I'm not against birth control and a relationship.
No, Margaret Sanger was a horrible person.
Right, but one of the things that governed her mentality was this notion that people who were of my ethnicity and people who were Chinese were inferior, and it all went back to the science of eugenics.
Right.
So I'm thinking that a lot of your Supreme Court decisions of that time, Dred Scott, when basically Connie said that you basically have nothing that we need to recognize as a Negro. You're hearing the language of people that fostered that idea or believed in that premise that African Americans, or should I say blacks at the time, or Negroes,
right,
or for that matter Chinese, and anyone who looked different from them were inferior.
They thought there was they thought there was a biological basis for their opinions. So they considered it to be just standard scientific opinion, and they didn't consider it to be racist or evil or anything in any kind of way. Just a fact of life, like like a person is smarter than a dog.
Yeah,
just different brain size.
And I think that's what Tom was trying to get at. He was trying to get at what was behind the mentality of those Supreme Court decisions. What was behind the mentality of of slavery in the South, of even certain racist tendencies in the North. What was essentially behind the thinking, and I think a lot of it stemmed from that.
Well,
good point.
No, and actually, we've brought that point up in past, and Tom actually brought that point up past in an argument when talking about modern day issues,
right?
Because that same mentality has been, the new masters,
right,
are now the government who's actually enslaving the black people once again, with their policies, because they're making their existence, and I use the word nihilism, where they do not have, a right, a thought process on their own. I
think it's more like treating them as children and who aren't capable of thinking for themselves versus a nihilistic view
that they don't have a meaning.
People.
They don't have an independent. I mean, a nihilistic view of life is where you do not. Hold on. Let me finish. Is that where you do not
have to define nihilism a little differently?
Well, what is it? Let me hear it.
Is nihil. It comes from the Latin word nihil, Latin meaning nothing.
I know what nihilism means. How are you using it?
What I'm trying to say is that they're removing the individual meaning of life from people. The idea that they can prosper on their own, that they have individual self-worth, that they don't need a overlord looking after them to take care of them. They have a bigger meaning and purpose in life. So therefore, you remove, the government has replaced and put them in and says, well, you need someone to take care of you, just like in the slavery mentality, where you have to have, listen, we'll take care of you. We'll give you everything you need. You just do that, and you serve us, and you keep us in power. And that's the same slavery mentality that's happening today that happened back in the 1850s. It's the same party. It's the same mentality. It's the same Margaret Sanger mentality. It's all the same basic core idea of how do you treat other people? Do you view yourself as superior, having more knowledge, to not let this person succeed because this person is obviously inferior, so I have to take care of them?
Well, I don't think that's what.
Part of that is right. I mean, we're in the Enlightenment. Don't forget, we're in the Enlightenment period right now, in the 17 to 1750s, 1850s, and science is starting to replace theology as the epistemological base for understanding things, and out of some nihilism comes. Certainly, out of a nihilistic view comes a degrading of human life, and that allows for slavery. Out of the eugenic movement, the sciences, the new sciences, comes the fact that some people are inferior.
Degrading of human life.
1807, though, see, over against that, which is going on in the U.S., 1857 is Dred Scott. 1807, the English abolished slavery through William Wilberforce. So now the U.S. is fighting that movement, which has stopped 50 years or so, the Enlightenment thinking, but a lot of it comes down to just racism and economics. Unlike Muslim slavery, which was sensually focused, Islamic slavery to this day is focused on pleasing the senses of the master versus the economic focus of American slavery, which was more economic.
Well, let me give you. What is the end product of slavery? What is the end product for the slave? Is that their life is of less value of everybody.
It's lived for someone else. Yes.
So their life has less meaning.
Sure.
Correct. They're there to serve somebody else, and that is very nihilistic in its application. I wouldn't interpret that. Nihilism is a philosophy of no meaning. That's what I'm saying. Do slaves have meaning when they become slaves?
No,
that's
no.
Don't just pure. What I'm trying to say is, what you are doing is when you're putting people, you're making the government to take care of the one who provides for you. Is you've removed a meaning of life, and you put them on dependency path to serve the government.
I don't think that's the best way of explaining this.
I don't think so.
I could see it floating out there. I don't think it's the best way, but maybe Volanda has the best way. How do we? Well, you just did. You took that senior course, and what was their thesis? I mean, what was the thrust of the course at FAU?
The course at that time was that basically what was behind the so-called new science was racism, in fact.
Yeah,
and I think you mentioned that before. That what was really behind this so-called attempt to understand, I guess the so-called new science was that, in fact, they were still bringing in a lot of what they knew. I wouldn't say theologically, but basically some guiding ideas, and sort of like reinforcing them and making them what they considered at the time science. And it was really interesting because I often wanted to know what was the mindset. Is it because you were so repulsed by black skin that you felt that it was automatically inferior to you, or what was the mindset behind slavery? What was the mindset behind those
What year was that, Yolanda? What year was that?
They were talking about something like the 1700s.
No, Volanda. What year were you in that class?
Oh, I was in this class around 1991. Because it might be different now.
Okay.
If they still even have that course.
You're
at FAU at the time.
And what's your nationality?
I'm African American. I'm black.
Okay. Racism. Have you ever experienced racism in your life?
Sure.
How so?
I have. I've experienced it from it either being called out loud, the N word, and I've experienced it also employment-wise as well. So in both situations, some of it came from directly from what you would call the white-black on situation. But other times I've also experienced it in which it was minority on top of minority situation. Because what a lot of people don't realize, and I'm not trying to make a controversy of this, but since the Cubans, for example, I'll just give you an example. There was a company I used to work for, and I noticed that both these particular girls, these co-workers of mine, they were coming from all the way from Fort Lauderdale from Miami. And I was asking the question, Tom, of them, why are you coming all the way here to work? And they told me basically point blank, and later on I experienced something, like I told you, on the level of that. They said, it's difficult for us to find work in Miami, being black. I said, and I was referencing to one of them, I said, but you know the language, you know the Spanish language. She said that, it was difficult because the Cubans would not hire a black person even if they knew the language. So, I can't, so I said, to me that was strange, and then I had an experience myself with a Spanish person. I'm not going to say all Spanish people, but there's a type of racism, or like a clannish thing as well. That's there, if you could call it a racism, but it's just like a white on black situation.
When was the last time? When was the last time you experienced any sort of racism?
I wouldn't say it's been a long time ago. Maybe something like 2 years ago, where somebody referenced it. It was something out loud, and I think they were rather drunk too at this.
Firewater will.
Yeah, it will bring out. I'm sorry, I tend to believe that alcohol can sometimes bring out your true nature.
It does, yeah. It's true.
True
serum.
Mel Gibson.
True serum. Yeah.
But actually, quite recently at the farm store, when the guy made a reference to a crack whore. In other words, he thought all black women were crack whores. But in that instance, I knew, well, you could smell the alcohol a mile away pretty much.
Hey, did you know that the Emancipation Proclamation did not apply to the northern states, only to the southern states? Did you know that?
Absolutely. States like Ohio, and I'm trying to think of another one, maybe Maryland at the time. A number of those states, they still permitted slavery. That's correct.
Yeah. All right. Hey, once again, she brings
enlightenment.
Enlightenment, yes.
Well, we're
interesting.
We're racism free here.
Yes.
We all have our own problems, right?
I got a question for you.
Sure.
About that.
Valanda?
Well, Valanda, or you, or
Okay.
anybody. Define for me what race is.
Well, race is to me.
Going to make me crazy today.
No, I want a definition of what race.
The word race or racism?
Race.
The word is race. What does race mean, Valanda?
To me, it's all right. Okay, I'm going to define it as a black woman. It's something that, for example, I can't. It's a state of being. For example, I'm black. Okay. You can't erase my skin color. You can't change it unless something medically happens. That's who I am.
So skin color is the basic determination? The skin color is the basic determination.
For example, you can't exactly call a Jewish person. You can't make a Jew or a Jewish person or consider that a race, but that's a matter of faith. But there are some people that don't make that distinction. Adolf Hitler, for example, saw all Jews as having long noses and whatever. But to me, race is a state of who you are. If you're a black person, if you're an Italian, you're Italian, ethnically, or Caucasian, ethnically, Norwegian, what have you. It's who you are, who you were born as.
Okay, is President Obama black or white?
President Obama.
What race is President Obama?
What race is President Obama?
We got about 1 minute.
Okay. President Obama would be considered automatically in our race, from our perspective, as being black because he has a tinge of black ethnicity in him. I consider him biracial. I consider his mother and his father's race, but a lot of people don't. They would say because his father was black, he's black.
Yeah, but why does it go that way? Or why doesn't it go the other way?
That's the dominant look.
So it's
one of the,
visual?
It's visual.
Here's the deal, Tom. The justification is that when Barack Obama hits society, when his father did whatever hits society, the first thing they're going to see is their tinted skin. They don't see the white portion of him.
Okay.
That's what they say. That's what I'm telling you. What the black race says. I'm telling you how we define it. We consider him black. That is why right now, even though I think a certain way, I would never, if I wanted to stay alive in certain areas, I would never mention the fact that I am actually anti-Obama, because everyone, and I can tell you without hesitation, without even looking at it, if you came to my neighborhood November 6th, you would have seen nothing but Obama stickers and posters on everybody's lawn. Even though these are middle-class African Americans, because of the fact, and I'm just going to say it, because of his skin color.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. It's sad to say, but right now you are not even encouraged among my race, among my people, to question what he does, his ethics, his antics, precisely because of the color of his skin.
That is racism. If
Yes.
I've ever heard anything, that's reverse racism.
That is the racism that we experience as white people.
Yeah, that's
Caucasians.
I'm seceding from the union. All right.
Now you understand. Now that I put it so square and plain for you guys.
You are our resident race
champion.
expert.
Yes.
You're a race expert.
Thank you.
So
I don't know if I'm an expert, but I can tell you this is the guiding idea. This is the governing mentality of the black community right now.
Well,
all right.
And of the Democrats, too.
Hey, thanks a lot, Valanda. We got to get going here and end this segment. I have a note. Take care now. She's great.
Yeah,
she gave us a lot of insight.
Yeah.
And
I love her. She's great. She's fantastic.
Yeah.
And we all get teased for whatever.
No, she listens carefully, and
Yep.
she says, "Oh, you
Smart
know what?
lady.
I can call in on that because."
But
she
that's
knows
not
what
what
to add.
I have a cousin sending me notes saying, "I'm watching you and CJ right now. Your show's comical, but you still have no idea about truism. But I love you anyway. You're insane."
Still have no
All
idea
right.
about
Insane
what?
Tom Trento will be back with everybody else in just a couple of minutes.
No idea about what?